Guys, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Big House Podcast. And today I have a very special guest, an author actually. Her book, Shayla, just came out in February. Regina Lafrance. I'll let her introduce herself. I don't know if I murdered that, but Lafrance? Lafrance. How are you, Regina?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
No, and thank you for coming on the podcast. And just to give a little bit of background to the people that are listening, who is Regina, first of all?
So, Regina used to be a very hurt, depressed, disturbed individual. Mm-hmm. Someone who lived a life of chaos for 40 years due to some suffering in the past, going back to the 70s. And then I decided to write my book, Shayla, to create awareness to keep children safe. Mm-hmm. And when I did that, I discovered that while pleading with people to pay attention to their children when they say they don't want to go somewhere, mm-hmm. I discovered and came to the realization that it's never a child's fault.
And so does that mean that you said you wrote the book to bring some awareness so that we can protect our children?
Yes.
What else did that involve personally to you? How did you develop as a person? Does that mean that for the past 40 years you've been coping with it, living with it? How does that?
Yeah, so for the last 40 years I believed that I was worthless, mm-hmm. ugly, stupid, less than. And then when I decided that I no longer wanted to keep that secret, I wrote the book to let people know about the secret and why I want to create awareness to keep children safe. Mm-hmm. And then I started thinking better things of myself because I was able to go to the mirror and tell myself it wasn't your fault.
Did it ever involve therapy with you?
I had therapy for many years, but I never told anyone. I never told the therapist anything about my secret. And when the therapist would dig deep and say, it must be something that happened to you that makes you feel so depressed all the time, mm-hmm. At that point, I would never return.
But so therapy does work, but you just didn't want it to come out?
Right.
Even to a complete stranger, you couldn't bring yourself to tell.
The first time that I told anyone, mm-hmm. was in 2015. I was working with one of my clients, and my client told me that her little girl didn't want to go to summer camp that particular summer. And I said, did she tell you why she doesn't want to go? And she said, no. She doesn't tell me why. She just cries and says, Mommy, don't make me go. When that happened in 2015, I had chills, my hands were sweaty, and I was very, very upset. And I had a vivid memory of telling my mother, please don't make me go. And I went home that day, and I called on my best friend, and that was the first time that I told somebody about what had happened. And she said, you got to sit down and write this.
Why did it take the support of someone or for you to be heard to be able to write the story?
No, it was more like the agony that I felt when she told me her little girl didn't want to go. Mm-hmm. It was that shock that I had remembering when I didn't want to go. And I developed this strong desire to create awareness, to keep children safe. And if a child says, I don't want to go, we need to find out why.
Because sometimes as parents, we're occupied in our daily lives.
Yes.
We don't see the small signals, but yet
that's right.
Very important signals.
Very.
And I was very impacted whenever you did bring up the fact that we are so, not that we're oblivious to it, but we can kind of put that to the side. What other ways do you think that we can detect, that we can even, is it preventable?
Well, predators are always looking.
Yes.
You never know if it's preventable, because if you send your child to daycare or to the babysitter's house or somewhere, the parent doesn't know that something is going to happen. The parent doesn't imagine that anyone would ever hurt their child.
Absolutely.
But let's just say something like your child goes to daycare, and the daycare is great, wonderful. There's nothing about that daycare that you would think something bad would happen. But you never know. There may be a older son of the daycare provider, or a neighbor, or next door person, or a boyfriend, or a husband, or someone that is in the house, that if they have that mentality of being a predator, they could hurt that child just like that. And then the child is going to say, "Mommy, I don't want to go. Please don't make me go." And the parent have no reason to think that something like that would happen. The predators will always tell the child, "Don't be telling anyone. I will hurt you if you tell. This is our secret. Your parents would never believe you. Your parents would abandon you," or something. Or your parents would beat you up if you tell them. The child's afraid.
So then, do we also have to bring awareness to how hearing out children, or do we also have to? Because you said that maybe we can't prevent it because they are everywhere. But how can we try to prevent it then?
To ensure safety for your child. If you leave that child with a babysitter, or with the next door neighbor, or even with your own family.
Which, that's what's so surprising, because at the same time, it's like we don't want to live scared, but at the same time, you just can't trust anyone.
That's right. You have to be so secure and so aware of where your child is. And I know of a family that the little girl was being molested by her mother's sister.
So it's not only men.
No. And it's not only little girls that get abused. All children get abused if they're in that situation with a predator. So if you trust someone immensely, wonderful, make sure that your child comes home happy, and when that child goes back, that child wants to go back and is happy going back. Because the child will always let you know if they want to go or if they don't. Children are very innocent. That's why we have to be careful they don't walk into a car with a stranger, because they're just naive and innocent. They just want to go and play and do things. But if they say they don't want to go, and they're not sick, they're not running a fever, and they're not sick, they healthy and they should be going, we need to pay attention why.
And tell me about, you said children, the most beautiful thing about children is that they do have an innocence. They
Yes.
they play so innocently that
Yes.
they're unaware of even getting hurt. They'll eat whatever
Yes.
comes in front of them. For you, how did that mold you into the teenager you became after you were ripped of your innocence?
I became very sad and very harsh. I didn't trust anyone. I didn't want to go to church again. I didn't want to be around my parents. I was shameful. I felt dirty. If that makes any sense.
No, I mean, it was a lot of self-directed
Yes.
hate. Is that because you were never, you never brought it up to anyone?
I was told that my parents would never believe me. I was told again that I was ugly and stupid, and that I wasn't like my sister, and that they would never believe me. And that's the reason I was chosen to be there that day.
How did your faith evolve from that?
As a teenager, I didn't have any idea whether or not I had faith or not. I just didn't care about going to church or about believing in anything. I just wanted to run and hide. When I was 18, I left home and I never returned.
You couldn't leave sooner, or
no? Well, when I was 13 years old, my father was very disappointed in my behaviors, and he actually went to the priest for advice on what to do, and the priest advised him to send me abroad. And I was 13 years old, and the priest gave my father money to fly me to Canada to find a family to sponsor me to leave me there in Canada.
But no decision was
but
to you.
It didn't work out, so I came back home, and from that point on until I was 18, my main focus was to leave the island and never return.
For that short period of time that you did see a possibility out, what was that for you?
I just wanted to leave.
Wow.
Through my 20s and 30s, I didn't really have a specific faith. I never thought about it. I just lived one day at a time and never really thought about faith. But since I've started writing my book, and since 2015, when I knew this is what I wanted to do, I started my healing in terms of having self-worth and about being more confident with who I am. And I started developing a wonderful connection with a super divine power that I find to be extremely spiritual. And I have my own faith, and I do now know a lot about what it's like to be a Christian and to live a life of Christianity.
But tell me more about that divine healing power.
Well, I was thinking about becoming more confident and becoming more at peace with who I am. And one night, it was almost like I had a vivid dream that it came to my mind that it wasn't my fault, that I was wonderful, that I was worthy. And that day when I woke up, that's the day I went to the mirror and I said, you are enough.
2015 still?
After that, it was after 2015 when I started realizing that I did want to do the work myself, that it's never a child's fault. It all became like in one. I wanted to write about keeping children safe and creating awareness, but in the process, if I'm creating all this awareness for a child, I must heal my own traumas from when I was a child, and I became more happy and more at ease. What I have discovered then is I'm aware of the fact that it wasn't my fault. I'm aware that I'm a wonderful person. I'm aware that I can move forward, but the triggers are always there. So for someone that have suffered trauma, it's like being an alcoholic, and now you need to stop drinking for your safety and the safety of others. You are not a recovered alcoholic. You are a recovering alcoholic, because once you're an alcoholic, you always have that then in your brain. Now I'm not sure how it works, but you are a recovering alcoholic. Okay, so when you're healing from trauma, you never really heal. With my experience, you are in healing journey because you never forget the trauma. And when you have a trigger, which is a memory of something that can set you off, you can go off. And I used to go off all the time.
Which a good example would be whenever your friend's daughter came, like you said.
Yes, that was a trigger. Yes. So let's just say if someone, you are in your workplace.
Yes.
And if someone says to you something, I can't think of anything right now, but if someone says something that upsets you and triggers you to think, oh, she said that because I'm ugly. Oh, he said that because I'm not worthy of being here. Or they said that because I really can't hold this job because I'm not good enough. Those are triggers. And what I have done is I have become very aware of a trigger.
Okay.
And now I know, and I tell myself, it's just a trigger. It's not who you are. You have to file that back in your mind, because you are always and you will always be in recovering mode.
So which one goes first? The self-hate talk or the fact that you want to like suppress it? Which one would?
So the self bad talk is first, because you don't know love, so you don't love yourself. You don't know what love is, so how can you love yourself if you don't know what love is? So that's first, after trauma. And then the healing process is learning the reason that you live your life the way you live your life. The reason that you are so down on yourself is because that's what you believe about yourself. But it would be like, okay, from now on, you are going to speak English only, and you're never going to speak your own language. And you're going to learn this culture, and you're never going to speak your own language. Let's say for me, it's Portuguese. Well, I know I could only speak English now, but in the back of my mind, the Portuguese will always come through when I'm going to speak, right?
Yes, absolutely.
So when you're healing, those emotions are suppressed, but I don't really like to use the word suppressed, because I don't like to suppress anything.
Because you're like holding it back,
They're filed.
Right? Oh, they're filed, okay.
They're filed, but you're very aware of your file cabinet. And if they try to come out, you say, not today. You do come out, because triggers can come and go. They don't ask for permission. But it is your job to put it back on the file cabinet, because I now have a toolbox full of tools that I use to handle the triggers in the file cabinet. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So my tools are positive quotes, wonderful I am, positive affirmations, beautiful things that I love, such as gardening, baking, cooking, having flowers, calling a friend, just nice things that I like to do like that. And if a trigger comes, like let's just say my husband and I, if he says something that it's going to set me off, he doesn't mean it, but it will set me off anyway. My job is to recognize it and not engage and not allow my emotions to go run off of that comment he made.
But how does he make? So he's not at fault, but you won't backlash at him.
Right. He can make any comment. It could be anything. Oh, it's raining today and I'm stuck in the house. That could trigger something like the night at the cemetery that it was raining. Don't be telling me I'm stuck in the house. I'm not stuck anywhere. I don't care if it's raining. I'm going anyway. That's a trigger for me.
Yes.
I'll go in the rain. I'll go. No one's going to tell me I can't go because it's raining. This is just an example.
Yes.
And it's probably not a good example, but it's just, if somebody says something, it's not directed at you. But because you have your emotions all filed up in there, it could easily become a situation where you respond with emotions and not from a good place in your mind.
And how did you used to respond to them in like friend relationships or even work relationships? How did that affect you?
If someone said something I didn't like, or someone that said or did something I didn't like, I'd respond right back. No filter.
Really? How did you feel afterwards though?
Yes. I told them.
Okay. I mean,
a lot of times it could be losing a job or losing a friend or being in a situation that it wasn't the best situation, that will say something like, what's your problem? I didn't mean anything by it.
Yes.
But I didn't like it. And that was me. That's when I went to the mirror and I said, you've lived a life of chaos for all these years because of you. Because you didn't know how to react from a good place in your mind and not react with emotions.
But so then would you say you healed yourself, or what else did was it that specific moment of wanting to help children? How did that evolve, though? I'm interested because from what it could seem like, it wasn't just a decision. It can't be just a decision, because then you have to follow a certain amount of steps, keep on knowing yourself, keep on being aware. How does that healing evolve?
Okay, so one is never healed. That's why we call it healing, the healing process. But I educated myself on my behaviors. I wrote down all my behaviors in situations that I had been in through my 20s, 30s, and 40s.
Did someone tell you to do this?
It just came to me when I was writing. That's why I talk about that divine intervention. It came to me to write down my behaviors through my earlier years. I'm approaching 60 years old when I was writing the book. And I just didn't want to live a life of chaos anymore. I wanted to free myself and be free to do things and to live a life of happiness and peace.
It sounds surprising because you said you used to backlash at people with no filter, and then to suddenly just turn the page for you to kind of recognize your own faults is kind of like...
It didn't just happen. We're talking 2015.
Absolutely.
So I read the book, The Secret, and that was my very first step to start my work. So the book The Secret just teaches you to manifest. Manifest from a positive place in your life. Manifest for things as if you already have them. Okay. And I used to tell myself all the time, I am wonderful. I am happy. I am strong. I am successful. And those are the things, that's when I began. And then I read many books about self-improvement. And then I went to YouTube and I just watched and listened to videos all the time. Go to sleep meditating on videos. I am. Go to sleep on soft music that helps me relax and sleep. I've learned techniques that are designed to help you think better things and think better of yourself.
Can you share some of those techniques that helped you the most?
The number one thing that I've learned was the I am.
The I am.
Very, very powerful to me. Then I learned about frequency and vibration in the brain. There is actually music that you can play when you sleep. The vibration of that music actually helps you sort through things. And then meditations. I would go to YouTube and look up meditation to help you with depression, meditation to help you with financial success, meditation to help you about dealing with people that are difficult in your life. There's meditations for everything. And I would just leave my phone right by my pillow on soft, and that thing would just run for like 8 hours. Even when I was sleeping, it still works. You still hear it even though you're sleeping.
That's a huge power that people don't really become aware of until they want to, because frequencies just are around us all the time, and I'm glad it helped you. And
there was a gentleman from Texas, and I don't know a lot about him, but his name was Jose Silva. And he had a lot of children, and he believed deep in his heart that if he trained his children to believe that they could do anything, they could. And his children were so successful, and he developed this method called the Jose Silva method, which is actually frequency and vibration, and he has a sound that he plays for your relaxation and for your mode. And he has 3 techniques, which is you just close your eyes and he plays that sound. And level 1, level 2, and level 3, it's very basic. You just close your eyes and you count and imagine the 1 number or the 2 number or the 3 number, and you go right into relaxing.
Really?
Jose Silva method. Look it up. It's amazing. And so sometimes I play his vibration songs, which is, it's just like a sound of a pop, 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 just like that. I play that all night. amazingly soothing, and the brain just likes those waves.
Did you find all of this while you were authoring the book, like because you wanted to get more background, or
I wanted to find peace for me, so I'll read anything.
Mm-hmm.
There's a book out there called "You Are a Badass."
You're a badass,
and it's so good. It's
Really
just
good.
it's nothing bad in the book. It's just that you are a confident woman. You are a powerful person. It's what you say and how you say it. And it teaches you that you have 2 of these and 2 of these and 1 of these. And I love that because I used to be that person. If somebody said something, I would interrupt them right away, and I wanted to be heard. I wanted them to hear me, and I just want to be the center of attention and in that aspect. Like if there was a group and a conversation, this would never stop.
No, and the fact that you're so aware of it, I think, well, that's where the power is at. Like, it's just like you said, you used to backlash at people,
yes.
And I don't know. I get a sense of like peace,
yes.
and a peaceful energy from you, and so it's nothing tumultuous. It's something very, very at peace.
I have learned. I educated myself that I have 2 of these to listen more and 2 of these to observe more. And then what comes out of here is what I mean, and I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. And I don't have to make a lot of noise. And the softer you speak, the more people will listen.
I like that.
Before, I was just making noise. It was just noise, and people would be like, yeah. Or if I arrive, let's say, through my 30s, I used to go to my friend's house all the time, and every time I arrived in that house, they were just stop doing everything they were doing, and they would just hear about my drama. Oh, you'll never believe what happened now. And they would just be like, we're not surprised. It's you. How do you attract all this? You got fired for your job again? What kind of job do you have now? I was just always on the run.
So your friends already associated certain characteristics with you.
So now I've been doing this work and everything has been great. My friends from the 80s and 90s, luckily I have this wonderful thing that all my girlfriends from the 80s are still my good girlfriends. So
really?
I was very lucky that I was never judged, or they just loved me because the person that I am today was always there.
Is that because you always connected back to them, or how did you keep up with it?
We always stayed in touch.
Okay.
And now they see how I am, and they just shake their heads like, wow, we kind of missed the old Regina because you were just always on the go, and we never knew when you were going to show up or pop in or what job you were doing. I've had more jobs than jobs. I've had good jobs. Very good jobs and high-paying jobs, but I never stayed more than 1 year. A year and a half was always more than a year and a half was always a lot for a job for me.
When you started writing your book, would you say that you were a lot more consistent in everything?
After,
yeah.
After I started writing my book, after I finished my book and I started reading, going back and editing it and seeing how I used to be and how I wanted to become. That was the transition. And trust me, I am still learning. Every time I learn something, I write it down. I always have a notebook, or I send a message to myself. If I hear something that it's interesting and something I'd like to apply, I go ahead and do it. And I have friends now that I talk to about this, and they just look at me like, I can't do that. I'm like, yes, you can. I've done it. You can do it too. It's so important to not worry about tomorrow, and definitely do not worry about yesterday, because today is what counts. And when someone says, well, someday I'll do that, someday is today for me. Today, I want to do everything. I'm not going to leave it for tomorrow. Like someone told me, many people have told me, oh, I wish I could write a book. Maybe someday I'll write a book. Maybe when I retire, I'll write a book.
Mm-hmm.
I don't live my life like that anymore. Someday might never come. Well, you can plan someday I want to go on a trip around the world. You have to plan for that.
Yes.
But
absolutely.
certain things, don't be afraid. Don't worry, because to worry is not to have faith in yourself and in your divine power.
So does that mean while you were writing the book, you were going to expose your story to the world?
When I wrote my book, before I started,
Mm-hmm.
the day that I quit my job and told my husband I was going to write a book.
What did he say first of all?
He said, oh, you'll be writing another book. You'll be starting the book, but you won't finish. I said, no, remember I started writing in 2015? He said, yeah, whatever happened to that? I said, well, we have to dig up that big old laptop. It was this big and heavy.
Yeah.
He said, I don't know where that is. I said, we have to find it because we moved from Boston to North Carolina in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
I said, we need to find that laptop because I need that document in that laptop because I had written about 8,000 words.
Wow, okay.
So we found it.
Mm-hmm.
Couldn't even get it started or anything, but I did have a professional retrieve the document. And then I said, I am going to sit down and I'm going to write this book. And I did.
Is it again, because we're going back to like, I've even wanted to write a book, but about something in specific. People say they want to write a book. But how did you get yourself to write a book? Even your husband was surprised.
So I said, I have a story.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to let people know my story with the intent of keeping children safe.
So a sense of purpose.
Yes. And then I wrote on my notebook, this book will become the book of the month for a big book club. This book will sell 1 million copies. And this book will be a movie. And I began writing. And those goals still stand.
And I can absolutely see becoming one, because the way you authored the book, and it really just makes me feel a certain... I think when a book can make you start feeling emotions, it has power.
And this is one message that I want to send to everyone that will hear me in this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
My book is dark and sad, but the outcome is amazing. And what I want to do is let victims of trauma know that they too can wear their triumph badge proudly. Because in the process of writing this book, I retired my victim badge. And I became a survivor. I became a person that is going to fight for others. I became the voice for children. I am no longer shameful of what happened. But the reason I wrote what happened is because I want everyone to know how I got here and why I'm here now. I suffered all these years unnecessarily. Had I had someone back in my early 20s tell me that I could go to the mirror and say, it wasn't your fault. You do not have to suffer emotionally because of someone else did. You have nothing to be shameful about. And then someone has told me, okay, so what you do when your abuser was your own family? Someone that you have to see at every holiday. Someone that you still have in your life. What do you do then? How can you bring that out to the family when your parents don't believe that, let's say, somebody else in the family abused them? I say, I understand, because when my parents were alive, My mother passed away in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
Prior to that, I had written 8,000 words, but I would never have published it. So I understand I did not want to give my mother that pain and that shame of knowing that her little girl was brutally abused by someone that my mother trusted. I couldn't do it. So I understand if someone cannot tell their secret or expose their shame because their parents or whoever is still around and they know they're not going to believe them. So in that case, what I say is, for your own healing, you don't have to tell anyone. I developed an imaginary bubble around me.
Mm-hmm.
And I only let in positivity and love. Anyone's allowed in my bubble if they bring positivity and love. Anyone that is toxic to me are not allowed in my bubble. They don't mean anything to me. So what I tell people is, you can start your own healing by educating yourself like I did, that it wasn't your fault. And if that person that hurt you is still in the family, create your bubble and don't let them in any way, shape, or form. Don't let any negativity in any way, shape, or form, and protect yourself from the toxins outside your bubble. It's very sad when you are shameful of what happened to you, and those people that hurt you could be your own parents. It could be your next door neighbor. It could be your uncles. It could be your older brother or sister or somebody. Because when bad things happen, it could be anyone. It could happen to anyone. It could be anyone hurting another person. You just never know who that person may be. It could be a parent that was extremely abusive, physically abusive.
Yes.
It could be extreme neglect. It could be a victim that had extreme poverty. It could be a family that had so much stress in that family that the children were neglected. It doesn't have to be sexual.
Yes.
It could be sadness at its finest. It could be children that lived in filth because the parents were drunks. It could be anything that is going to cause child trauma. So I'm not just speaking about sexual abuse. I'm speaking about what children experience. I know a person that both parents were alcoholics, and they had 3 children. And when the father came home from work, the children would just disappear. Many times they didn't have dinner because they would drink, and then they were too drunk to care for the children, and then they would fight at night. Every time they went to the beach or they went on a trip, the kids would be afraid that the ride home was going to be awful. And when they arrived home, it was going to be awful. They never hit the children. They never abused them in any other way physically. But those children were all abused emotionally because they saw mom and dad fighting constantly and throwing things around and hitting on each other.
But Regina, let me ask you, like in those moments, maybe those children are unaware that there might be resources or there might be help.
How can a child 5, 6, 7 years old, even 10 years old, know about resources?
Exactly, but what do you think then that we can do? Or
So what I think is, if you see something, say something.
Okay.
So if you have anyone you know, and it's a tough one because let's say it's your neighbors, and you don't want to get involved, but you know something is going on. You know that child is crying all the time. You see the child wandering in the yard at hours that the child should not be wandering in the yard. You can do something.
But
yes.
can I ask you something? Sometimes don't those children end up in, well, I'm not saying they're any better off where they're at, but aren't these children sent off to like homeless shelters? Like if you're not going to take that responsibility, they're going to go.
Well, if you call social services,
Yes.
The children may be taken away, and it's just it never ends. But if you see something, say something.
I mean, yeah, I'm still all for see something, say
but
something.
But it's true. If that child goes to a foster home, they may or may not be treated poorly.
But I mean, I'm not saying your journey. I mean, your journey can be an example of what can be done, though.
Yes.
Because even if you did grow up in a broken home or broken shelter, again, you said it took you a long time, and your goal is to not allow these kids, allow these teenagers, allow these 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds to suffer with their trauma as long as you did. And I think that's a very purposeful goal, a very ambitious goal, and a very good goal for just about everyone. So I think that, let's just say that you went through a lot, so therefore it's worth admiration. And even you recognizing that I was this type of person, now I'm this type of person. Change is possible, right?
Yes.
No matter what the circumstance might be.
And I've never had children, so I don't know what kind of parent I would have been back then. Mm-hmm. In my 20s, I probably would have been one of those parents that said, she's fine. I don't know. I didn't have these signs of becoming aware in my 20s and 30s. So I'm not sure I would have been a good parent.
Okay.
But now that I have a clear vision what it's like to be a child in desperate need of being heard. That's when my desire to create awareness comes from.
And have you helped someone like that? It doesn't have to be only a certain type of abuse, but with depression, like have you talked to certain individuals that have helped you too?
I have, and just my podcasts and the way that I speak, mm-hmm. and my interviews with different people, I've had women tell me that the way that I speak about becoming a survivor and wearing a Triumph badge, mm-hmm. people are like, wow, I can do that. I'm going to work on that. You helped me open my eyes that it wasn't my fault. I've had messages from people that told me that.
Does it ever surprise you that of the people messaging you?
It makes me feel good that they trust me to send me a message. But at this point, I'm never surprised by anything. I have women tell me that they were abused when they were little. They were abused when they were teenagers. I know a person that is a senior citizen, and recently after she read my book, we both cried, we hugged and we cried, and she told me that when she was in high school, she had a very bad experience, and she's been very closed and very to herself all through her life because she did never allow anyone in. And she said that she was thankful to read my book, even though it was sad, that she realized that she too could go to the mirror and say, it wasn't your fault.
After writing the book, after meeting so many people, do you become keen or aware of a certain energy that a person has to the point where you kind of like start suspecting something of them?
Of all the teachings that I've been studying, one of them is to become very intuitive.
Yes.
And to become extremely aware of the energy in the room. And it's easier than you think to tap into that intuitive part of your brain. I can look at a group of women or men, mostly women, and I can tell you right away who's a carefree, confident woman and who carries that timid feeling, or what are they going to think of me, or do I look all right?
How do you tell? Is it body language? It's
body language.
Yes.
A lot of times it's the way they look at me.
Okay.
I can tell.
Okay.
The way that they hug. If you hug a person, sometimes I'm actually hug a person too tight because I'm very strong.
Yeah.
But they're just, they don't really. Or if you shake somebody's hand and it's just like that, they don't give you. They don't give you a firm handshake. But I can tell. I can look at a picture of a group of women and I can tell who's self-conscious and who's not. The body language.
Wow, and women already are very intuitive.
Yes, and the energy in the room, I can walk in a room and know immediately if there's tension in the room.
Really?
Yes.
But you're not the type of person to let anyone know, or it's just like you walk into a room and...
If I walk in the room and I see there's tension, I become extremely soft-spoken. I'm very kind and very gentle. And if I still feel that, I know it's not the right time. And I just hug and love and we make it another day, or it's not the right time, it's not the right group, it's not the right family, it's not the right time.
Yeah.
And I just...
Upon writing the book, while you were writing the book, you said that you started doing a lot of self-research, a lot of reading books. Up until the point that you were going to release the book, right before that, how did you feel right before releasing your book?
I had already been doing a lot of promotion with podcasts and with interviews. I was ready. I was ready to let it all out. What I didn't know was that the promotion and the marketing it never stops.
Really?
You have to continue. A book is not going to sell itself. You have to continue to, if my intent was to create awareness to keep children safe, I must continue.
Okay.
I must continue and I must bring it forth so people know. People know what Shayla is all about. You can't just write a book and hope for the best, because then my journey would be over. I want to continue. I want to spread the good news. I want to speak with women all over this country and tell them I know.
And it's not only a certain type of abuse. There's depression today that exists amongst...
This stress, job-related stress, relationships, personal growth, being a parent, divorce.
Yes.
There's just so much. Young ladies and young men being bullied in high school.
Yes.
There's so much of it.
And there's power to gaining that confidence and finding yourself, but it's not always the easiest road travel.
It's not the easiest, and I wanted, when I started writing my book, I said, I am never going to color my hair again.
Why?
Because I used to color my hair dark, and my hair was not dark, and I said, I want to be who I am. I want beauty from within. And I did not like it. I did not like growing my hair the color that it is now. I did not like it at all.
Really?
No. And then once I got used to it, I have so many women tell me that they absolutely love my hair. And now I feel great.
No, it looks
but
great.
They also tell me I could never do it. Because they're not ready. And a lot of times people ask me to touch my hair. The other day, I walked into the store and I had a woman come right at me. And my husband said, oh, she's going to tell you she loves your hair. Sure enough, she did. She said, I love your hair. I saw you the second you walked in. I said, oh, I wish I could have hair like that. And I thank them and tell them that they too can do it. It's a personal choice. But I want to be comfortable with who I am. If I want to do gardening, I'm going to go do gardening. If I want to write my second book, I'm going to do that. If I want to cook, then I'm going to cook. I am able to now narrow it down to one task at a time. My brain is settled in to focus on this. We're doing this today. I like to paint old furniture. So when I take an hour or 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon to do that, that's all I do. I focus on that. Or if I go to the gym, I focus on that. Or before, I always used to be all over the place because I never really finished anything. Or I interrupted people when they were talking. Or I could never be home alone. If my husband wasn't home or if something, we didn't have anything to do at home, I'd just go somewhere. And now I actually enjoy being alone. I spend a lot of time alone now. I like who I am.
Really? And you know, the fact that you said don't live in yesterday, don't think about tomorrow,
right?
Live in the moment. It's one of those important things that you really have to realize that life is fleeting away the more you decide now to live today. And I really got a sense of that in your book. That, I mean, obviously it wasn't from one day to another. It was a journey. But you started deciding to live from within, like you said.
Yes.
And bring out, and then people started to see it. I mean, people
yes.
started complimenting
yes.
your hair, and
yes,
and that's a beautiful thing, because every individual has their own essence, has their own being that brights up someone's world. I'm sure you mean a lot to your husband, mean a lot to your friends.
Yes.
Just even seeing you today now, what has been the biggest impact your book has made on you, I would say, and on the people around you?
I'm going to answer that in just a minute, but I'm going to just tell you just an example going back to focusing on today and focusing on the moment.
Okay.
It's an everyday work. It's every day you have to strive to stay focused and do better, or stay focused on task. I went over my 80-year-old neighbors the other day. And this was just recently, a lesson that I learned about that. And my phone was home, and he's 80. He has no idea about a Google phone or an iPhone. I mean, watch.
Yes.
And I'm talking to him because he had told me that he had some zucchini plants to give me. So I went over there and I grabbed them. We were talking for a minute. And I felt my Google Watch vibrate, so I went like this. And then all of a sudden it vibrated again, and I went like this. And him not knowing what a Google Watch is told me, "Oh, I'll let you go. You must have to be somewhere."
Oh.
I was so upset because he thought I was just checking the time, but I wasn't. I wasn't focused on our conversation. I had to check to see what the notification was. I was so upset with myself that I said, I don't care where I am. If I am talking to someone, and if this Google Watch buzzes, I am not looking.
I mean, but not to blame you alone, because I mean that becomes pretty addicting. Like, just the fact that like you go like this, it's
That's
easy.
right.
I mean, technology makes it that convenient
But
for you.
I don't want it to be like that.
And I like that. I like that.
And in fact, it's not even on right now. I just have it on for the time because I'm so aware. Why do I have to go like this if I'm having a conversation with someone? And those are the things that I practice. Those are the things that self-awareness for me is very important. But going back to your question.
No. But definitely self-awareness, because I mean, even the conversations that we don't think are important, for another person, it just might be. The inattention you're giving that person
right.
could also affect them.
Yes.
And I don't know, but that story was really good to show, like, that even in today's world, like, we're so busy buzzing on notifications, that the most important thing that we can do is give our ears and our attention to people.
And I'm kind of glad that happened, because it opened my eyes to just be like, okay, there's absolutely no reason for you to check your watch. it's like a habit.
Yes.
And my neighbor, poor thing, he didn't even know. He doesn't even know what a Google phone a watch is, and he rushed the conversation because he thought I had to go somewhere and I had to be somewhere, and I said no, I have all the time in the world, and I stayed longer talking with him because I owed him that much.
Yeah.
And we end up having a great conversation. But going back to your question, how much impact the book has made for me or others? Well, for me, it's mission accomplished. Huge accomplishment for me. And when people call me or send me a message or tell me how they learned that survivalship is very important and we can all do it, that's what makes me shine inside, is the fact that my book has helped people see and feel that if Shayla could do it, they can do it.
Is there a moment that you think back and where you didn't want to continue, and even to now you're like, wow, like I did it, right? Was there a point that you wanted to stop?
So in the very beginning, I told 2 friends that this book, Shayla, was a bad nightmare that I had, that it was total fiction and it was a dream. And then I told another friend, this story happened to a little girl I knew. I didn't want to tell anyone it was me. But then those 2 friends that I said it was a dream, they sat me down and they said, we know it's you, because nobody can dream that or make that up.
Yeah.
And she said, they told me, we know it's you and other people will know it's you as well. And that's when I realized I had to be strong and be brave. I have 3 people in my life, 3 oldest sisters in my life that are very against me writing this and publishing this book. They don't believe that I should speak up. They don't want to know. They won't read it. They know the priest very well. Well, the priest is now deceased, but they know who he was. They know that he did other things to other women in the village, but they don't want to talk about it, and they don't want to know anything about it because it hurts them to know that their little sister went through that.
But I think that's also because they feel a sense of guilt, right?
Possibly. But they feel bad that happened, and if they don't talk about it, then they don't deal with it. But my mother is no longer alive, so I'm not afraid of hurting anyone in that aspect. But I could never do it if my mother was alive. Because I could not give her that pain, knowing that a little girl was hurt so badly.
But now the current Regina, would there be the opportunity to tell her if you did have the chance to? Or did it take your mom not seeing that?
It took my mother not seeing that. Even now that I feel like I am healing at a higher level than most, I still know that my mother would be horrified if she knew that happened. And I could never write this if she was alive. My sisters, on the other hand, I have a different level of love for them. It's not my mom. Mm-hmm. And they were not there. They were not responsible for anything at all. It had nothing to do with them. I told my sisters that I did this to create awareness for parents. And they're very old-fashioned. One is in her 70s, one is in her 80s, and they just cannot understand that I would want to talk about that now, so many years later. But I have a lot of life to live, and I don't want to live in that dark hole anymore. I want to be emotionally free and I want to make a difference. I want to help others.
What is being emotionally free for those people that are pursuing that emotional freedom? What does it feel like?
So for me, I used to feel shameful of what happened. I used to feel embarrassed that it happened. I used to feel ugly. I used to feel less than. So I was always feeling sad and not having happiness to shine and to be free, to live a peaceful life. So when I began all this and up until now, I feel emotionally free. I feel like that priest does not carry any burden in my mind. That priest doesn't mean anything to me. I released him from any obligations that I have in my life. He does not rent any space in my mind or in my heart. And I relieved myself from that burden of being so suppressed and so shameful for something that somebody else did.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked me, what would you tell the priest if you saw him today? I saw him in I don't know, 2010 maybe. I went home to visit my mom and I saw him. I did nothing. I looked the other way and kept on walking. And that's what I would do today. He doesn't mean anything to me. Nothing. He does not mean, when I think of him, it's like a bottle cap on the ground. I might pick up a bottle cap and recycle it. But
yeah,
he doesn't have any effects on how I live my life now.
No, and your book really shows a true test of overcoming, a true test of getting to know yourself, a true test of coming to a love state for which now I know that, it has cost you a lot. It has.
Yes.
You were telling me jobs, plenty of them, relationships, plenty of them, to where you would just not one confrontation, so therefore you'd left it. One thing I wanted to ask you is, so then how do you, Regina, look at faith now? Is it just that concrete, more spiritual phase of life? Do you not associate it with a religion?
So I've always been Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
And I've never changed to any other religion. I did not practice the Catholic faith for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
It turned out that when I met my husband and married him, he was Catholic. And
what a coincidence.
And it was, at first, I was a little harsh on the Catholic Church, on the Catholic religion, and over time I became a little bit more humble about it because it was important to him. And since I've written the book, I have finally discovered and come to the conclusion and make peace with myself that not all priests are bad, just like not all cops are bad.
Mm-hmm.
We have bad people in every organization, every firm, every school, everywhere. We have bad people. We have those people that are just have a criminal mind. And so I never would want to say anything negative or bad about the Catholic Church. And so now my husband and I do practice the Catholic Church. The Catholic religion, again, for the sake of our marriage and our life together.
And thank you for that, because bad people do exist in the world, but
yes.
There are also good
yes.
faith people in this world trying to make a change, like yourself. You are